Welcome to Profit in Frames, your home for the financial autopsy of horror and psychological thrillers. Tonight, we're dissecting another nightmare, carving into the movie budget, the box office numbers, and the shocking profit behind the fear. Let's begin the operation. Hello, movie lovers, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're firing up the DeLorean, pushing it to 88, and dialing back the clock to a time of flannel shirts, dial-up internet, and a film that didn't just redefine a genre, it gutted it, dissected it, and brought it back to life, smarter, sharper, and scarier than ever before. We are, of course, talking about one of the most rewatchable movies in horror history, a true genre-defining classic that sliced through the apathy of the mid-90s with a razor-sharp wit. The original 1996 masterpiece, Scream, 1996. Let's set the scene. The mid-1990s were a graveyard for the slasher film. The titans of the 80s, Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, had become parodies of themselves, limping through an endless parade of increasingly convoluted and uninspired sequels. The genre felt creatively bankrupt, a relic of a bygone era. Then, from the shadows, emerged a film that knew all of this. In the classic hit Scream, 1996, starring the incredible Neve Campbell as the ultimate final girl Sidney Prescott, and directed by the legendary master of horror, Wes Craven, the very man best known for creating Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street. Audiences experienced a landmark release from Dimension Films that was both a loving homage and a brutal takedown of everything they thought they knew about horror. Even decades later, the influence of Scream, 1996, is so profound that it is still the benchmark against which modern slashers are measured, and it continues to be compared to the foundational pillars of the genre like Halloween and Friday the 13th. This isn't just a testament to its quality, but to its lasting impact on global cinema and its continued popularity on streaming platforms like Paramount+, HBO Max, and Amazon Prime, where new generations are constantly discovering its genius. This wasn't just another slasher movie. Scream, 1996, was a cultural phenomenon. It arrived like a lightning bolt, electrifying a genre that was considered dead and buried. Wes Craven's brilliant, tension-fueled direction, combined with Kevin Williamson's razor-sharp, pop-culture-infused script, created something entirely new. A meta-horror comedy that was simultaneously terrifying, hilarious, and incredibly clever. The film didn't talk down to its audience. It celebrated their knowledge of horror tropes and then used that knowledge against them, creating a terrifying and unpredictable game of cat and mouse. The casting was a stroke of 90s perfection. The film co-starred a dream team of up-and-coming talent and established stars, creating an ensemble that felt authentic and iconic. Courtney Cox, at the height of her Friends fame, brilliantly played against type as the ambitious, ruthless reporter Gale Weathers. David Arquette brought a goofy, heartfelt charm to the lovable, bumbling Deputy Dewey Riley, creating a character the audience couldn't help but root for. And the group of teenagers at the heart of the mystery was a masterclass in casting. Skeet Ulrich as the brooding boyfriend Billy, Matthew Lillard in a career-defining performance of manic energy as Stu, the effortlessly cool Rose McGowan as Sidney's best friend Tatum, and perhaps most importantly, Jamie Kennedy as Randy Meeks, the video store clerk who served as the film's and the audience's guide to the rules of surviving a horror movie. And who could forget the opening? It's not just an iconic movie scene, it's one of the most audacious and game-changing openings in the history of cinema. Featuring Drew Barrymore, the biggest star in the film, as Casey Becker, the sequence is a masterwork of suspense. What starts as a flirty phone call with a stranger about scary movies slowly descends into a sadistic, life-or-death trivia game. Craven expertly builds the tension to an almost unbearable level before delivering a shocking, brutal, and unforgettable climax. By killing off its most famous face in the first 12 minutes, Scream, 1996, sent a clear message to the audience. No one is safe and all bets are off. That scene alone generated so much buzz and word of mouth that it turned Scream, 1996, from a niche horror flick into a must-watch cultural event over the 1996 holiday season. The movie nostalgia for Scream, 1996, is off the charts, and for good reason. It's a film that respects its audience intelligence, creating a dialogue with horror fans who knew the tropes and rules by heart. This smart, self-referential approach is precisely why it remains a fan-favorite movie and a cult classic that feels just as fresh and relevant today as it did decades ago. The fan engagement with movies like this is timeless. To this day, you can dive into Reddit threads and find endless, passionate movie fan theories and movie spoilers discussion threads dissecting every frame of the original film. Was Stu secretly the mastermind? Did Dewey know more than he let on? The theories are a testament to the film's intricate plotting and rewatchability. Its influence is everywhere. Scream, 1996, single-handedly resurrected the teen slasher, inspiring a wave of late 90s hits like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend. More importantly, it established a successful franchise that, unlike its 80s predecessors, has maintained a remarkable level of quality and is still producing hit movies today. From its iconic Ghostface mask, which was an existing fun world design that became an instant Halloween staple, to its brilliantly constructed whodunit mystery plot, Scream 1996 is a true Hollywood hit, and without a doubt, one of the all-time great movies in the horror genre. Now let's pull back the Ghostface mask and look at the brilliant financial engine that powered this cultural sensation. Because behind the Scream 1996, the scares, and the satire, there lies a story of incredible business acumen. From an investor's perspective, Scream 1996 is the textbook definition of a home-run investment, a calculated low-risk venture that delivered an astronomical return on investment. This wasn't a reckless gamble on a massive blockbuster. It was a shrewd, strategic play in a neglected market segment, executed with near-perfect precision. The foundation of its incredible financial success begins with its remarkably lean production budget. The film was made for an estimated $14 to $15 million. To truly appreciate how controlled this figure was, we must look at the cinematic landscape of 1996. This was a year dominated by huge-budget blockbusters designed to be global events. James Cameron was already deep into the behemoth production of Titanic, while audiences flocked to see films like Independence Day, which carried a hefty $75 million budget, and Mission Impossible, which cost $80 million to produce. Even a more grounded action film like Twister cost around $92 million. In that context, Scream 1996's budget is almost shockingly small. This was not a summer tentpole. It was a modestly budgeted genre picture from Dimension Films, a division of Miramax known for its edgier, more independent-style productions that often punched well above their financial weight. This low budget was the cornerstone of the film's brilliant financial model. The financing structure, being handled entirely in-house by a smaller, more nimble studio division, meant the financial risk was contained and clearly defined. Had the film been a complete box office failure, while certainly painful, it would not have been a catastrophic studio-sinking event. This is a critical distinction from the too-big-to-fail blockbusters, where a single flop could have devastating consequences for a major studio. This lower financial pressure also allowed for greater creative freedom. Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson were able to make the edgy, rule-breaking film they envisioned without the immense pressure of needing to deliver a four-quadrant, billion-dollar hit. The film's primary monetization streams began with its theatrical run, and the results were simply phenomenal. The movie didn't just meet its modest global gross forecast, it obliterated it. Released in late December, a slot typically reserved for Oscar contenders and family films, Scream 1996 leveraged its counter-programming status to perfection. It opened strong, but thanks to the explosive word of mouth, it had incredible legs, remaining a box office force well into 1997. Scream 1996 went on to gross over $103 million domestically and a total of over $173 million worldwide. Let's analyze that return. Against its $15 million production budget, a $173 million theatrical gross represents a staggering ROI, return on investment, of over 5x from its theatrical run alone. This is an absolutely astronomical return, a level of raw profitability that most $200 million blockbusters, with their massive marketing spends and profit-sharing deals, can only dream of. This incredible overperformance had an immediate and dramatic effect on the equity stake valuation of the intellectual property. Before its release, the Scream 1996 IP was effectively worthless, valued only at the price of its script. After its opening weekend, it was a proven, bankable commodity. The film's success didn't just generate a one-time profit, it created a long-term, high-value asset. This is because the story was perfectly designed for sequel potential. The Ghostface killer was a costume and a persona, not a singular, supernatural entity like Jason Voorhees. This ingenious concept meant anyone could be the killer in the next installment, making the franchise infinitely renewable. This immediately established its franchise valuation as a top-tier property for the studio. The financing structure was refreshingly straightforward. The project was entirely financed and produced by Dimension Films, the genre-focused label run by Bob and Harvey Weinstein at the time under the Miramax banner, which was owned by Disney. They specialized in identifying commercially viable, high-concept scripts and producing them for modest budgets, while retaining full ownership and creative control. This vertical integration meant that, when the film became a runaway hit, the studio didn't have to share the profits with co-financiers or international distribution partners. This singular ownership was a key decision that massively increased the equity stake valuation of the property for the parent company, ensuring they reaped 100% of the rewards from their initial investment. The primary monetization streams for a film in 1996 were not limited to the box office. Crucially, the booming home video market was a goldmine. VHS sales and rentals were at their peak, and this revenue stream often generated as much, or even more, net profit for the studio than the box office itself, as the studio kept a much larger percentage of home video sales compared to ticket sales. Scream 1996 was a sensation on home video, becoming one of the most rented and purchased titles of 1997, further padding its already incredible profits. Add to this the revenue from television rights, soundtrack sales, and merchandise, especially that iconic mask, and the full financial picture becomes even more impressive. When analyzing the initial investment, the internal global gross forecast for a mid-budget horror film released in the competitive December quarter was likely very conservative. Studio executives might have been hoping for something in the range of $40 to $50 million worldwide to turn a respectable profit. The film's actual box office performance of over $173 million wasn't just a success. It was a spectacular overperformance that shattered all expectations and reset the market for horror. This is where we see the exponential power of its ROI, return on investment. Let's estimate the total cost, including a robust marketing campaign, at around $30 million. Even with this higher all-in figure, the theatrical run alone returned nearly 6 times its total investment. But when you factor in the massive, high-margin profits from the global home video sales and rentals throughout 1997 and beyond, the final ROI, return on investment, for Scream 1996 is conservatively estimated to be well over 10x, making it one of the single most profitable films of the entire decade. This immense success fundamentally transformed the equity stake valuation of the IP. Before 1996, the Scream 1996 property was worth the $400,000 the studio paid Kevin Williamson for the script. After its theatrical and home video run, the equity stake valuation skyrocketed into the tens of millions, arguably hundreds of millions when accounting for franchise potential, making it one of Dimension Films' crown jewels. This success also completely reset the global gross forecast for any future sequels. No longer a risky one-off, the Scream 1996 franchise was now a premier bankable property, with Scream 1996 2 being fast-tracked and given a much larger budget. The low financial risk of the initial production budget, combined with the explosive box office return and a perfectly designed, endlessly repeatable formula, created a perfect storm of profitability that is still studied by industry executives and film students today. It proved that in Hollywood, you don't always need the biggest budget to make the biggest impact. Sometimes, all you need is a sharp script, a clever idea, and a very, very sharp knife. No movie breakdown of a classic movie like Scream 1996 would be complete without talking about its perfectly assembled cast. This wasn't just a group of actors. It was a snapshot of 90s pop culture, a collection of faces that would define a generation of horror for film enthusiasts everywhere. At the very center of this terrifying story is the incredible Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott. Sidney wasn't your typical horror movie victim. She was the fearless survivor, a character who fought back with intelligence and resilience. Neve Campbell's performance redefined the final girl archetype for the modern era, and it's a huge reason why Scream 1996 remains such a timeless movie. Before Scream 1996, she was already a rising star from the TV show Party of Five and the teen witch cult classic The Craft, but her role as Sidney Prescott made her a global icon. Of course, Sidney wasn't alone. The film features an amazing ensemble, led by Courteney Cox as the sharp-tongued, ruthlessly ambitious reporter Gale Weathers. At the time, Courteney Cox was one of the biggest stars in the world thanks to her role on the sitcom Friends, and her casting brought a huge amount of star power to Scream 1996. Rounding out the original trio is David Arquette as the sweet but clumsy Deputy Dewey Riley. The on-screen chemistry between Dewey and Gale became a fan-favorite storyline that would continue for decades. One of the wildest pieces of movie trivia is that Courteney Cox and David Arquette actually met and fell in love on the set of Scream 1996. A real-life romance that mirrored their characters' journey. The teenage cast of Scream, 1996, was equally iconic. We have Skeet Ulrich as Sidney's brooding boyfriend, Billy Loomis, and the hilarious and unhinged Matthew Lillard as Stu Macher. Matthew Lillard's over-the-top performance in the film's final act is one of the most memorable in horror history, a perfect blend of comedy and terrifying mania. His actor filmography would later include another iconic role as Shaggy in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies. Then there's Jamie Kennedy as the film geek Randy Meeks, the character who famously lays out the rules of surviving a horror movie, a meta-commentary that made Scream, 1996, so groundbreaking. And we can't forget the brilliant casting news twist of having the film's biggest star, Drew Barrymore, play Casey Becker in the opening scene, only to be killed off immediately. This shocking move by Dimension Films and Wes Craven set the tone for the entire film. No one is safe. The cast of Scream, 1996, is a perfect ensemble, and their performances are a huge reason why the film is still considered one of the all-time great movies in the genre. Now let's move beyond the box office numbers and dissect the intricate financial architecture that was quietly assembled behind the scenes. While the script was the blueprint and Wes Craven was the master builder, the casting of Scream, 1996, was a masterclass in financial engineering. For any mid-budget film, managing talent costs is the razor-thin line that separates a modest profit from a runaway, franchise-spawning hit. In the case of Scream, 1996, the studio's disciplined and strategic approach to compensation, specifically its minimal use of back-end participation, was the secret weapon that allowed it to maximize its profitability and retain an almost unprecedented share of the film's unexpected, industry-shaking windfall. To understand the genius of this strategy, we first need to define our terms. Back-end participation, often referred to as points in an actor's contract, is a form of deferred compensation where a star, director, or producer agrees to a lower upfront salary in exchange for a percentage of the film's profits. It's a powerful incentive, but it can significantly erode a studio's net profit on a successful film. In today's Hollywood, back-end deals for major stars are the norm. But in the mid-90s, the power dynamic was different, especially for a genre film from a specialty division like Dimension Films. The studio held nearly all the leverage, and they used it to construct a financial firewall around their investment. They weren't just casting a movie, they were assembling a portfolio of talent, carefully balancing risk, cost, and marketing impact. Let's break down the actor salaries, which reveal a clear, tiered strategy. The cast was a shrewd mix of established television stars, legitimate film icons, and a stable of hungry up-and-comers. The pay scale reflected this perfectly. At the top of the pyramid for the core cast was Neve Campbell. As the lead, the anchor of the entire narrative, she reportedly earned around $1.5 million. For a rising star primarily known for the hit TV show Party of Five, this was a solid and respectable payday. However, from the studio's perspective, this was an absolute bargain. They were securing the face of a potential multi-film franchise for a fraction of what an established A-list movie star would have commanded. This was a calculated bet on potential, not a payment for existing box office drawing power. It was a salary that reflected her status as a known quantity from television, but it was structured in a way that protected the studio's bottom line. Next, we have the film's crucial supporting ensemble of young actors: Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, Rose McGowan, and Jamie Kennedy. These were the fresh faces that would either make or break the film's authenticity. For them, Scream, 1996, was a career-making opportunity, and their compensation reflected that reality. They were likely on standard Screen Actors Guild-scale contracts for a film of this budget, with estimated salaries in the low six figures, perhaps in the range of $150,000 to $250,000 each. For the studio, this was an incredibly efficient use of capital. They acquired a phenomenal, energetic, and perfectly cast group of actors for a collective cost that was less than a single A-list star's salary. In hindsight, Matthew Lillard's iconic, unhinged performance alone was worth millions in entertainment value and memorability. But the studio acquired that lightning in a bottle for a fixed, predictable cost. Then there are the established stars, brought in to lend the project credibility and marketing muscle. Courteney Cox, a global superstar from the cultural juggernaut Friends, would have commanded a significantly higher fee, likely in the $1 million range. This wasn't just a salary, it was a strategic marketing expense. Her involvement signaled to a broader audience that Scream, 1996, was more than just a low-budget horror flick. It gave the project an air of legitimacy and prestige, attracting viewers who might not typically watch a slasher film. And this brings us to the single most brilliant piece of casting from a financial perspective: Drew Barrymore. Her salary, for what amounted to just a week of work, was likely in the range of $500,000 to $750,000. On a per-day basis, this might seem disproportionately high, but this wasn't a payment for screen time. It was a payment for a marketing masterstroke. The star power ROI, return on investment, on her involvement was immeasurable. Her famous face was plastered all over the posters and trailers, leading audiences to believe she was the film's star. Her shocking and brutal death in the opening scene generated millions upon millions of dollars in free publicity and priceless word-of-mouth buzz. It was the ultimate water cooler moment. For less than $1 million, Dimension Films bought a marketing hook that was more powerful than any television ad campaign they could have devised. It was a high-impact, short-term investment that yielded an exponential return in audience engagement and ticket sales. However, the most critical factor in the film's financial structure, the decision that turned a hit into a financial grand slam, was the near-total absence of back-end participation for the cast. Given their respective career stages, it is highly improbable that Neve Campbell or any of the younger actors had points, or any form of profit-sharing in their initial contracts. They were paid their upfront salary, and that was the extent of the studio's financial obligation to them. This meant that as the box office gross rocketed past $50 million, then $100 million, and climbed towards an astonishing $173 million worldwide, the studio was not contractually obligated to share that massive, unexpected upside with the on-screen talent. This single decision dramatically increased the film's net profit margins, ensuring the windfall flowed directly back to the studio. The only key creative likely to have a significant back-end deal was director Wes Craven. As a horror legend and the visionary behind A Nightmare on Elm Street, he was the one non-negotiable element. His name was the ultimate seal of quality for horror fans. The studio would have had to concede a percentage of the profits to secure him. But this was another shrewd calculation. They gave a piece of the pie to the one person who could guarantee the quality of the final product while keeping the rest of the pie for themselves. They paid for proven genius behind the camera and acquired raw potential on the cheap in front of it. This disciplined approach also served to mitigate casting risk. The biggest risk the studio took was building a potential franchise around a lead, Neve Campbell, who was not yet a proven box office draw. By keeping her salary and contract terms controlled, with no back-end escalator, the studio protected itself financially if the film had underperformed. But because the film exploded and she became an iconic final girl, for a new generation, the studio reaped all the rewards. They now owned a beloved franchise lead at a bargain price, which gave them immense leverage heading into sequel negotiations. For the studio, the lack of significant back-end participation in the first film was a masterstroke of financial planning. It ensured that when Scream 1996 unexpectedly became one of the most profitable films of the year, the lion's share of that profit flowed directly back to the investors and the studio. This infusion of capital not only looked spectacular on a balance sheet, but also provided the confidence and the immediate financial resources to greenlight a sequel, fast-track its production for the following year, and begin the process of building what would become a billion-dollar franchise. The ultimate lesson from the casting of Scream 1996 is a powerful one for any investor or producer. Controlling the terms of back-end participation, especially on an unproven IP with high upside potential, is one of the most effective strategies to maximize shareholder value in the event of a breakout success. The architects behind Scream 1996 understood this implicitly. They built a brilliant creative product on an even more brilliant financial foundation, ensuring that, when the Scream 1996 S of the audience turned into the ringing of the cash registers, the sound was loudest in their own offices. All right, everyone, grab your popcorn and lock your doors, because we're about to dissect the bloody heart of what makes this film a masterpiece, the story itself. A full story breakdown of Scream 1996 reveals a narrative that is so much more than just a masked killer chasing teenagers. It's a brilliant puzzle box, a love letter to the horror genre, and a razor-sharp satire of 90s culture. For anyone searching for a Scream 1996 plot summary, here it is in a nutshell. 1 year after the murder of her mother, high school student Sidney Prescott finds herself terrorized by a new killer, known as Ghostface, who loves to play deadly games based on horror movie trivia. What follows is a terrifying whodunit where Sidney and her friends must try to survive, all while navigating the rules of a real-life slasher film. And a final warning. This analysis will be filled with major spoilers, so if you haven't seen this classic, turn back now. The screenplay analysis of Kevin Williamson's script is where you find the film's genius. Scream 1996 is famous for its meta approach. The characters in the movie have seen all the same horror movies we have. They know the tropes, they know the cliches, and they try to use that knowledge to survive. This brilliant genre insight was revolutionary at the time. It was a horror movie for horror movie fans. The character of Randy Meeks, played by Jamie Kennedy, literally spells out the rules. Don't have sex, don't drink or do drugs, and never, ever say, "I'll be right back." This self-awareness makes the narrative breakdown of Scream 1996 incredibly engaging. It's not just a slasher. It's a commentary on slashers. You see its influence in modern films and series on Netflix and other platforms that love to play with audience expectations. The film's clever dialogue and intricate plotting elevated it above similar movies in the slasher genre, creating a unique blend of terror and wit. Now for the part that everyone talks about, the part that has been searched for millions of times. The Scream 1996 ending explained. The final act takes place at a house party, a classic slasher setting, and it delivers one of the most shocking and brilliant twist endings in horror history. After a brutal final chase, we discover that there isn't one killer, there are two. The masterminds behind the Ghostface mask are Sidney's boyfriend, Billy, and his goofy best friend, Stu. This reveal was a game-changer. It broke the cardinal rule of the whodunit and created a truly unpredictable climax. The movie themes of betrayal and the corrupting influence of media are driven home in their final monologue. Billy's motive is revenge, as Sidney's mother was having an affair with his father, which drove his own mother away. Stu's motive, as he maniacally puts it, peer pressure. This dark, cynical ending cemented the film's legacy and has fueled countless Scream 1996 fan theories over the years, with some fans still arguing over which killer was responsible for which attack. And for those wondering, there is no Scream 1996 post-credit scene. The film ends on a final, chilling note that perfectly sets the stage for the franchise-level storytelling that was to come. From a financial perspective, a screenplay is the foundational asset of any film project. In the case of Scream 1996, the script wasn't just good. It was a unicorn, a piece of intellectual property that single-handedly launched a billion-dollar franchise. The studio's investment in this story is a masterclass in risk management and long-term value creation, centered around maximizing the franchise IP worth and opening up endless avenues for content monetization. Let's begin with the initial investment. The script development cost for Scream 1996 was centered around one major expense, the script acquisition cost. Kevin Williamson's spec script, then titled Scary Movie, sparked a fierce bidding war in Hollywood. Dimension Films ultimately acquired the rights for a reported $400,000. For an unproduced screenwriter in the mid-90s, this was a massive figure. This represents a significant upfront capital investment. While there were likely additional costs for minor rewrites and polishes, the core of the script development cost was this initial purchase. This was a high-risk bet on a bold, unproven concept. This brings us to the creative risk. The script's meta-commentary was its most defining feature and also its biggest financial gamble. The studio had to wonder, would audiences in Middle America find the constant movie references clever, or would they find them alienating and pretentious? This high level of creative risk is precisely what made the risk-return ratio so compelling. If the bet failed, the studio would lose its modest production budget. But if it succeeded, the film would stand out in a crowded market and have the potential to become a cultural phenomenon. The film's explosive success demonstrates one of the most favorable risk-return ratios in modern horror, where the unique story was the primary catalyst for its massive overperformance at the box office. This success immediately transformed the financial calculus, leading us to the sequel potential score, which is a perfect 10 out of 10, or extremely high. The story's most brilliant financial innovation was making Ghostface, a costume that anyone could wear, rather than a single, supernatural killer like Jason or Freddy. This whodunit formula is a repeatable, financially sound model for a franchise. It allows for a new story with new killers in every installment, keeping the format fresh and the audience guessing. This narrative structure is the engine that drives the long-term franchise IP worth. It ensures that the brand can continue indefinitely, which is a dream for any investor. This directly enhances the franchise equity valuation, as it turns a single hit film into a reliable, long-term asset. Ultimately, this robust story foundation opens up a vast pipeline for content monetization. The whodunit structure is not just for films. It's perfectly suited for television series, video games, and even interactive experiences. The core IP is so flexible that content monetization opportunities are almost limitless. The initial $400,000 investment in a clever script has now grown into a franchise IP worth that is approaching $1 billion. This is a testament to the power of a well-crafted story, proving that the most valuable asset in Hollywood isn't a special effect or a movie star, but a truly original idea. When you think about the visual style of modern blockbusters, your mind probably jumps to massive explosions and stunning CGI. But the genius of Scream, 1996, lies in its deliberate and masterful use of classic, practical filmmaking to create a world that feels terrifyingly real. There are no digital monsters here. The horror is grounded and in your face. The cinematography of Scream, 1996, guided by the brilliant director of photography Mark Irwin, is a masterclass in building suspense and making a quiet suburban neighborhood feel like the most dangerous place on earth. Let's do a breakdown of some memorable scenes. The opening sequence with Drew Barrymore is a perfect example of effective cinematic storytelling. Notice how the camera moves. It prowls around the house, slowly tracking her, making the audience feel like the killer. The use of large windows and reflections constantly keeps you on edge, wondering if Ghostface is lurking just outside. This isn't flashy filmmaking. It's smart, precise scene composition designed for maximum tension. Another great example is the garage scene with Rose McGowan's character, Tatum. The lighting design is stark and clinical, and the camera uses a slow, agonizingly long take to watch the garage door rise, a simple mechanical action that becomes an instrument of absolute terror. These are the VFX scenes of Scream, 1996, practical, clever, and brutally effective. The overall film aesthetics of Scream, 1996, define the look of late 90s horror. It's crisp, clean, and takes place in bright, spacious homes, a stark contrast to the dark, grimy look of 70s and 80s slashers. This choice makes the violence feel even more shocking when it erupts. For those interested in the behind-the-scenes details, the film's iconic look was achieved through specific filming locations. The movie was shot primarily in and around Santa Rosa, California, which provided the perfect Anytown, USA backdrop. The beautiful house used for the final party scene is a real location that has become a pilgrimage site for fans. The visual effects that were used were almost entirely practical, handled by the legendary K&B EFX group. The Ghostface mask, the disappearing killer trick, and especially the gory kills, it was all done in camera with clever tricks and expertly crafted prosthetics. This commitment to practical effects is what gives Scream, 1996, its timeless, visceral punch. Now let's peel back another layer of this financial masterpiece and analyze the visual strategy of Scream, 1996, from a purely economic perspective. In an industry often defined by a relentless obsession with spectacle, the production of Scream, 1996, represents a masterclass in fiscal discipline, strategic minimalism, and intelligent resource allocation. The film's entire visual approach is perhaps the single greatest example of its core financial principle, achieving an astronomical ROI versus visual complexity. This isn't just a metric, it was a guiding philosophy. The less the production spent on flashy, ephemeral effects, the more profitable the entire venture became, creating a powerful financial engine that would lead to staggering cumulative earnings over its lifetime. Let's begin with the most significant line item on any modern film budget, or in this case, the remarkable lack thereof, the VFX budget. In the landscape of 1996, a year where audiences were wowed by the city-destroying digital effects of Independence Day and the CGI-fueled chaos of Twister, visual effects were rapidly becoming the main draw. For a major blockbuster, the VFX budget could easily consume 40–50% of the entire production cost, a massive capital expenditure. For Scream, 1996, the VFX budget was microscopic, almost a rounding error. It is estimated to have been well under $500,000, which would represent less than 4% of the film's total production budget. This is a critical distinction. That $500,000 was not spent on digital artists, expensive software licenses, or weeks of rendering on Silicon graphics workstations. Instead, this capital was allocated directly to the highly skilled, old-school artisans of the practical effects team, in this case, the renowned K&B EFX Group. Their budget was for tangible, in-camera assets, gallons of fake blood, specialized prosthetics for knife wounds, and the mechanical rigging for physical gags like the iconic and brutal garage door sequence. This represents an incredible level of production efficiency. By grounding the horror in a visceral, tactile reality, the filmmakers not only made the movie infinitely scarier, as the violence felt disturbingly real, but they also saved tens of millions of dollars. This lean, grounded approach to the film's visuals is the primary reason why the ROI versus visual complexity ratio for Scream, 1996, is one of the most impressive in the history of modern cinema. The film delivered maximum psychological impact for minimum financial outlay. This disciplined approach leads us to an even more fascinating and telling metric, the CGI cost per minute. For a film like Independence Day, this cost would run into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dollars per minute for its effects-heavy sequences. For Scream, 1996, that cost is effectively zero. There is no significant computer-generated imagery to be found anywhere in the film's 111-minute runtime. This deliberate creative choice had a massive, cascading positive impact on both the budget and the production schedule. Firstly, it completely eliminated the need for expensive software licensing and the hiring of a large, specialized digital effects team, which would have added millions to the budget. Secondly, it drastically reduced the time and cost associated with post-production spending. The editing process was focused on performance, pacing, and tension, not on waiting for digital shots to be rendered, composited, and approved. This shortened the post-production window, allowing the studio to get the film into theaters faster. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly from a long-term asset perspective, it future-proofed the film. The Achilles heel of many 90s films is their primitive CGI, which can look dated and cartoonish to modern eyes. Scream, 1996, completely sidestepped this risk. Its practical effects and masterful in-camera suspense are timeless. The true genius of the film's financial model is that its most valuable and enduring visual assets, the elements that define its brand to this day, cost a fraction of a single minute of modern CGI. This is the absolute epitome of smart capital allocation efficiency. Consider the Ghostface mask. It wasn't the product of a multi-million-dollar design process involving teams of concept artists. It was an existing mask called the Peanut-Eyed Ghost, made by the company Fun World, which producer Marion Madalna and Wes Craven discovered while location scouting. They secured the rights for a modest licensing fee, and in doing so, acquired for pennies on the dollar one of the most recognizable and marketable pieces of iconography in horror history. The ROI on that simple licensing agreement is, without exaggeration, infinite. Similarly, the film's other key visual effect was the masterful direction of Wes Craven. The suffocating tension, the perfectly timed jump scares, the expertly choreographed chase sequences, these were created not with expensive technology, but with classic, cost-effective filmmaking techniques. Meticulous storyboarding, clever camera placement, sharp editing by Patrick Lussier, and a deep understanding of audience psychology. This is intellectual capital, not financial capital, generating on-screen value. Ultimately, this incredible fiscal discipline during the production phase is what set the stage for the film's massive, long-term profitability. Because the upfront production costs were so tightly controlled, the film reached its break-even point with astonishing speed during its theatrical run. Industry analysts estimate it was likely profitable by its second weekend. This meant that the vast majority of its $173 million global gross was pure, high-margin profit, the first major deposit into what would become the enormous cumulative earnings of the Scream, 1996, IP. The film's low visual complexity directly translated into a high initial ROI. This profit was then massively amplified by the booming home video market of the 1990s. Every VHS tape sold and rented was another layer of high-margin revenue built upon that initial, hyper-efficient investment. Unlike a CGI-heavy film that might require a larger box office to recoup its costs, Scream, 1996, was a profit-generating machine across every platform it touched. The studio wasn't just earning back its investment, it was building a war chest. The visual strategy of Scream, 1996, provides a powerful and enduring lesson for investors, producers, and filmmakers alike. Suspense is cheaper than spectacle, and creativity is a more valuable asset than computing power. By rejecting the era's trend of digital excess and instead focusing on script, performance, and classic, practical filmmaking techniques, the production achieved a legendary ROI versus visual complexity. They created a financial foundation so strong and so profitable that it has supported a billion-dollar, multi-decade franchise, generating immense cumulative earnings that continue to flow nearly 3 decades later. It is a testament to the simple, powerful truth that in the business of fear, how you make an audience feel is infinitely more valuable than what you pay to show them today. We're tuning our ears to the sounds that made a generation jump out of their seats. The music of Scream, 1996, is a perfect time capsule, a brilliant mix of a haunting orchestral score and a killer alternative rock soundtrack that defined the sound of 90s horror. This combination of cinematic music and popular songs is a huge part of the film's enduring cool factor and its nostalgic appeal. The official soundtrack for Scream, 1996, is not just a collection of background tunes. It's a carefully curated playlist that captures the film's edgy, self-aware, and ultimately terrifying tone. Let's start with the man behind the suspense, the score composer Marco Beltrami. At the time, Beltrami was a relatively unknown composer, a student of the legendary Jerry Goldsmith. Scream, 1996, was his big break, and he delivered an absolutely iconic score. One of the most memorable themes is the haunting, sorrowful piece now known as Sidney's Lament. This beautiful, tragic melody perfectly captures the trauma and grief that Neve Campbell's character carries with her. Beltrami masterfully weaves this theme throughout the film, creating a powerful emotional core amidst the chaos. The thematic score for Scream, 1996, is a masterclass in tension, using sharp, dissonant stings and frantic, percussive cues to keep the audience on the edge of their seat. This incredible work earned him significant soundtrack acclaim and launched his career as one of Hollywood's go-to composers for horror and action. But the orchestral score is only half the story. The songs in movie history are rarely as perfectly chosen as they are in Scream, 1996. The OST, original soundtrack, is a who's who of 90s alternative and rock music. The most famous of these is the cover of Don't Fear the Reaper by Gus Black, which plays during a key romantic moment, dripping with dramatic irony. But the real fan-favorite song, the one that everyone remembers, is Red Right Hand by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. This moody, sinister track became the unofficial theme song for the entire franchise. Its inclusion was a stroke of genius in music-driven storytelling, adding a layer of cool, gothic menace to the film. The full soundtrack list is a nostalgic goldmine, and thanks to its enduring soundtrack popularity, you can find it easily on streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, where it continues to enjoy significant streaming success even today. Now let's pivot from the visual to the audible and analyze the Scream, 1996, soundtrack not just as a collection of cool 90s alternative rock songs, but as a meticulously constructed, multifaceted financial asset. In the mid-1990s, the movie soundtrack market was far from an afterthought. It was a booming, multi-billion-dollar industry. A hit movie could spawn a hit album, creating a powerful and highly profitable secondary revenue stream that could significantly impact a film's overall financial performance. The financial strategy behind the music of Scream, 1996, was a brilliant hybrid model, perfectly calibrated for its budget and its target demographic. It balanced the cost-effective creation of an original, atmospheric score with the higher upfront costs, but far greater marketing power of licensed pop and rock songs. This sophisticated strategy was designed to generate substantial revenue from two primary channels: immediate, high-value opportunities through album sales and sync licensing, and the creation of long-term, passive streams of royalty income. First, let's break down the initial investment required to build this audio portfolio: the music budget. For a mid-budget film like Scream, 1996, the music budget would have been a carefully managed and scrutinized line item. Based on industry standards of the time for a film with its profile, the total music budget was likely in the range of $500,000 to $1 million. This capital was allocated across several key areas. A portion went to the composer, a then-up-and-coming Marco Beltrami, for his fee and the costs associated with recording his chilling orchestral score. However, the vast majority of this budget would have been consumed by the music supervisor's primary task: securing the rights to the curated selection of existing songs that gave the film its distinctively cool, Gen X flavor. This was a calculated risk. Licensing songs from established or popular artists is significantly more expensive than simply filling the runtime with an original score. Each song requires a negotiation for two separate rights: the master use license, from the record label that owns the recording, and the synchronization license, from the music publisher that represents the songwriter. For a dozen songs, these fees add up quickly. But Dimension Films was not just spending money, they were making a strategic marketing investment. By loading the soundtrack with cool, recognizable songs from artists like Moby, Gus, And most crucially, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, they were engineering the soundtrack album itself to be an attractive commercial product, a tangible piece of the film's edgy, self-aware identity that fans would want to own. This investment paid off handsomely and almost immediately through the album's sales ROI. The Scream, 1996, music from the Dimension motion picture soundtrack was a significant commercial success. It tapped directly into the zeitgeist of 90s alternative culture and became a must-have album for fans of the movie. The album sold over 500,000 copies in the United States alone, earning it a coveted gold certification from the RIAA. This level of sales generated millions of dollars in revenue, providing a strong, tangible, and immediate return that likely covered the entire initial music budget, and then some. This immediate success was critical. It de-risked the entire music strategy and turned all future earnings into pure profit. More importantly, this success created long-term value that continues to generate revenue to this day through two distinct and powerful financial channels. The first is royalty income. This is the passive, long-tail revenue generated from the ongoing sales and consumption of the music. In the 90s and 2000s, this meant a steady stream of mechanical royalties from every CD sold. Today, that stream has evolved to include revenue from millions of plays on digital streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. While the per-stream payout is small, the sheer volume over nearly 3 decades creates a consistent and reliable trickle of cash. Every time someone adds Red Right Hand to a Halloween playlist or a fan revisits the soundtrack, a small payment flows back to the rights holders, including the studio. This royalty income is the definition of a successful long-term asset, an investment made once in 1996 that continues to produce cash flow with no additional effort or expense. The second, and often more lucrative, channel is sync licensing. This is the high-margin, high-value business of licensing a specific song or piece of score for use in other media, be it another film, a television show, a video game, or a commercial. This is where the true brand equity of the Scream, 1996, soundtrack is monetized. The single most valuable audio asset created by this film is the inextricable link between the movie and Nick Cave's Red Right Hand. Before Scream, 1996, it was a critically acclaimed, atmospheric song. After Scream, 1996, it became the unofficial theme song for Ghostface, an instant audio cue for ironic, postmodern dread. Because of this deep and lasting association with the franchise, the song now has immense sync licensing value. Another production wanting to evoke that specific Scream, 1996, vibe, that blend of cool menace and intellectual horror, can achieve it instantly by licensing this track. This makes the song a valuable piece of creative shorthand, and the rights holders can command a significant premium fee for its use. This is a perfect example of franchise synergy. The film made the song an icon, and the song, in turn, reinforces the film's brand identity every time it's licensed for use elsewhere. This symbiotic relationship has extended the song's life and value far beyond its initial inclusion, as seen with its prominent use in the hit show Peaky Blinders, which further cemented its status as a go-to track for stylish dread. This principle of leveraging musical equity also applies directly to Marco Beltrami's original score. The haunting, emotional cue known as Sidney's Lament has become as integral to the franchise's identity as the Ghostface mask itself. This iconic piece of music has been used repeatedly in the trailers and marketing materials for subsequent Scream, 1996 films. This is a form of internal sync licensing, where the studio leverages an asset it already owns to sell a new product. Instead of paying a massive fee to license a trendy pop song for a Scream, 1996, VI trailer, they can use Sidney's Lament to instantly evoke decades of franchise history, character emotion, and audience nostalgia for free. This internal synergy saves the marketing department millions of dollars over the life of the franchise and strengthens the brand's continuity. In conclusion, the hybrid music strategy employed for Scream, 1996, was a resounding financial triumph. It was a forward-thinking approach that treated music not as a background element, but as a core component of the film's intellectual property portfolio. The initial investment in licensed tracks was a savvy marketing play that was recouped and made profitable by strong album sales. This immediate success then paved the way for decades of value creation. By forging an iconic musical identity around key tracks and score elements, the studio cultivated a collection of audio assets that continue to generate high-margin revenue through both passive royalty income and active, high-value sync licensing deals. The Scream 1996 soundtrack wasn't an expense. It was a portfolio one that continues to pay handsome dividends, proving that in the business of Hollywood, the right sound can be just as profitable and enduring as the right picture when a movie transcends the screen and becomes a cultural icon. It's often because of two powerful forces: fan engagement and awesome official merchandise. For a film as influential and visually iconic as Scream, 1996, the pop culture impact is immeasurable, and it all starts with one of the most famous masks in horror history. The Ghostface mask isn't just a prop. It's a global phenomenon, a piece of merchandise hype that turned a low-budget horror villain into a Halloween superstar, rivaling classics like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees. The most incredible part of the Scream, 1996, merchandise story is that the mask wasn't even designed for the movie. It was a pre-existing mask called the Peanut-Eyed Ghost that Wes Craven and his team discovered while location scouting. They licensed it, and in doing so, created the foundation for a merchandising empire. The Ghostface costume is arguably the most important piece of official merchandise in the franchise. It's simple, it's creepy, and it's accessible. This accessibility has fueled decades of incredible cosplay at fan conventions and Halloween parties worldwide. This organic fan engagement is what keeps the franchise alive and relevant, as new generations discover the thrill of dressing up as Ghostface. While the mask is king, the world of franchise collectibles for Scream, 1996, has grown immensely over the years. We've seen incredible action figures and high-end statues from companies like NECA, capturing the likenesses of Sidney, Dewey, and Ghostface in stunning detail. There are also tons of themed apparel, from t-shirts quoting Randy's rules to hoodies featuring the iconic movie posters. For serious collectors, there are often limited edition releases and exclusive drops of things like vinyl soundtracks and replica props. This strategy of offering a wide range of collectibles, from cheap Halloween masks to premium figures, is a smart way to cater to every level of fan. Even before the age of social media, Scream, 1996, generated huge social media buzz on early internet forums, with fans creating fan art and debating fan theories. That tradition continues today on platforms like TikTok and Reddit, where the fan engagement is as passionate as ever, proving that the legacy of Scream, 1996, is about so much more than just the film itself. Now let's analyze this explosion of fan culture from a strategic, financial perspective. For a studio, merchandise isn't just a fun extra. It is a massive, high-margin revenue stream that operates on a fundamentally different and more profitable model than the film itself. The entire strategy is built on two core principles: maximizing the high-margin, low-risk income from licensed product royalty, and leveraging the power of organic, cost-free marketing to generate a powerful fan-driven ROI. First, let's demystify the business model of licensing and royalties. For the vast majority of merchandise, the studio, in this case, Dimension Films, does not actually manufacture or sell the products. Instead, they license the Scream, 1996, intellectual property, the Ghostface likeness, logos, and character names to third-party companies that specialize in costumes, toys, or apparel. In exchange, the studio receives a licensed product royalty on every single item sold. This is an incredibly lucrative model because the studio takes on almost no risk. It doesn't have to worry about manufacturing costs, inventory, or shipping. It simply collects a check. Based on industry standards, studios typically earn a licensed product royalty rate of 8% to 15% on the wholesale price of the merchandise. The case of the Ghostface mask is a bit unique since the design was licensed by the film, but for all other merchandise, this model applies. Now, let's look at the projected sales. The numbers here are staggering, largely thanks to the evergreen nature of Halloween. Every year, millions of Ghostface masks and costumes are sold. Let's be conservative and say that in the years since 1996, the branded toy revenue, including costumes, has generated hundreds of millions of dollars in retail sales. A steady stream of licensed product royalty, income from this single product line, has likely netted the rights holders tens of millions in pure profit. This is where the importance of retail partnerships comes in. Having the Ghostface costume available in every seasonal aisle at Walmart, Target, and Spirit Halloween is crucial. These partnerships ensure mass market penetration and volume, turning a movie prop into a perennial, high-margin cash cow. This entire ecosystem is designed to maximize the income from the licensed product royalty, turning the film's cultural heat into a consistent stream of high-margin cash. However, none of this works without the second core principle: fan-driven ROI. The most effective marketing for merchandise is the kind the studio doesn't have to pay for. Every October, when social media is flooded with pictures and videos of people in Ghostface costumes, that is millions of dollars in free advertising. This organic fan-driven ROI is the engine that powers the entire merchandising machine. The annual tradition of cosplay creates authentic demand that a traditional TV ad simply cannot replicate. The studio's role is to simply make the product available and let the fans do the marketing. This creates a powerful feedback loop. The film inspires fan engagement, which in turn drives merchandise sales, which generates a high-margin licensed product royalty for the studio. This symbiotic relationship between a passionate fanbase and a smart licensing strategy ensures that the financial success of Scream, 1996, extends far beyond the box office, generating significant, high-profit revenue year after year. The official movie trailer for Scream, 1996, dropping with teaser release moments that sparked massive fan buzz, set the stage for a premiere event rivaling any competitor's excitement, while the clever marketing campaign built theatrical release hype across the globe. The marketing for Scream, 1996, was as revolutionary as the film itself. It was a masterclass in subverting expectations and generating word of mouth that money simply can't buy. It all started with the brilliant movie trailer, which heavily featured Drew Barrymore, the film's biggest star. Audiences went into the theater expecting her to be the main character, which made her shocking death in the first 10 minutes an all-time great moment of cinematic bait-and switch. In the pre-internet era of 1996, there was no social media campaign as we know it today. The marketing relied on a few key, powerful tools. The iconic, "What's your favorite scary movie?" tagline was everywhere. It was in the TV spots that ran constantly on MTV and other youth-focused channels, and it was plastered on the now classic vintage movie posters. These posters, with their stark black and white images of the terrified cast, became iconic in their own right. The teaser release strategy was all about creating a mystery. Who was Ghostface? The marketing never gave away the killer's identity, which fueled endless schoolyard speculation and debate, the 90s equivalent of a viral trend. The premiere event for Scream, 1996, was a huge Hollywood affair, leveraging the star power of Courtney Cox to get mainstream press attention. While there wasn't a globetrotting press tour like we see for modern blockbusters, the cast did the rounds on talk shows and in magazines, building the trailer hype and excitement. But the boldest move of all was the decision to give the film a worldwide release in December. A horror movie in the middle of the holiday season was unheard of, a direct counter-programming move against the feel-good family films that usually dominate that time of year. This risky strategy for the theatrical release paid off spectacularly, as the film became the cool alternative for teenagers and young adults. Now, decades later, Scream, 1996, is a staple of the Halloween season, and its streaming debut on platforms like Paramount Plus introduces it to a new generation of fans every year, solidifying its legendary status. Now, let's transition from the savvy marketing tactics to the cold, hard numbers of the investment. A film's marketing is not an art project. It is one of the most significant and high-risk investments a studio makes. The success or failure of a blockbuster hinges on the efficiency of this spend. The entire financial narrative is a battle between two core concepts: the massive upfront investment known as the P&A budget and the ultimate measure of its success, the marketing spend ROI. For Scream, 1996, this was a high-stakes gamble that paid off magnificently. Let's first define the investment. The P&A budget, which stands for prints and advertising, represents all the money spent after the film is finished to market it and distribute it to theaters. For a mid-budget, high-potential film like Scream, 1996, this figure was substantial but controlled. Based on industry standards of the time, the worldwide P&A budget is estimated to have been in the range of $10 to $15 million. This figure is nearly equal to the production budget itself, which is a common ratio for films that need a strong marketing push. The largest component of this was media buying costs, the millions spent on those memorable TV spots on MTV, trailers placed in front of other movies, and print ads in magazines. This P&A budget represented the studio's significant bet on the film's success. Before we can calculate the return, we must understand how the revenue flows. When you bought a ticket in 1996, that money didn't go directly to the studio. The first major hurdle is the theatrical revenue split. Typically, studios and theater chains split the box office gross, with the studio's share in the domestic market being around 50–55%. On top of that, the distributor, Dimension Films, charges distribution fees, which are typically 8–15% of the gross rentals, taken off the top before any profits are calculated. So, of the $173 million global box office, the actual amount that flowed back to the studio for profit calculation was likely in the realm of 85 million. This is where the calculation for marketing, spend ROI, becomes critical. This metric tells investors how many dollars of revenue were generated for every dollar spent on marketing. Key stat: with an estimated P&A budget of $12 million, generating over $80 million in theatrical rentals for the studio, the direct marketing spend ROI from the box office alone is a staggering 6x. This means for every dollar spent on marketing, the campaign generated $60 in theatrical revenue, a figure that signals a monumental financial victory. This exceptional marketing spend ROI is a direct result of an incredibly efficient campaign that generated massive word of mouth, the most valuable and cost-effective form of advertising. To further refine this analysis, we can look at the international distribution ROI. While Scream, 1996, was a huge domestic hit, $103 million, it also performed very well overseas, $70 million. The return on the portion of the P&A budget allocated to international markets was also incredibly strong, especially for a horror film, a genre which at the time did not always travel well. A clever, universally understood, whodunit plot and the iconic visual of Ghostface helped the film succeed globally. The immense success of this campaign demonstrates how a well-executed, strategic P&A budget is not just an expense, but a powerful investment that can turn a smart, low-budget film into a global financial powerhouse. Fans of Halloween's genre-defining twists and Clue's heart-pounding whodunit will find Scream, 1996. Bridges both worlds, delivering blockbuster storytelling moments that rival franchise-level hits now streaming on Netflix, HBO Max, or Disney+. For any movie lover, one of the best ways to understand a film is to compare with other films and see where it fits in the grand cinematic landscape. Scream, 1996, is a fascinating case because it was both a loving tribute to its predecessors and a radical reinvention of the genre. Its closest genre rivals are the classic slashers of the 70s and 80s, but it completely changed the game. The most obvious franchise comparisons are with John Carpenter's Halloween and Sean S. Cunningham's Friday the 13th. Scream, 1996, openly acknowledges its debt to these films. The characters even watch Halloween during the final party scene. However, where Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees were silent, supernatural killing machines, the killer in Scream, 1996, Ghostface, was just a person in a costume. This made the threat feel more grounded and terrifyingly plausible. This shift from a supernatural monster to a human one is a key reason why Scream, 1996, felt so fresh and became an instant classic among the top films in genre. When looking at similar movies that came out after Scream, 1996, you can see its influence everywhere. The film's success kicked off a massive wave of teen-focused horror movies in the late 90s. Its most direct box office competition in the years that followed was I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was even written by the same screenwriter, Kevin Williamson. Other fan favorites from this era, like Urban Legend and Final Destination, all owe a huge debt to the formula that Scream, 1996, perfected. A cast of attractive young stars, a clever high-concept mystery, and a healthy dose of self-aware humor. Before Scream, 1996, the slasher genre was considered dead. After Scream, 1996, it was the hottest ticket in Hollywood. This incredible impact is why Scream, 1996, is not just another horror movie, it's a true landmark of the genre. From a financial analyst's perspective, a film's success is never judged in a vacuum. It is measured directly against its competition and the overall market conditions. The key to a successful investment is accurately forecasting a film's potential market share projection while carefully weighing the saturation risk assessment. For Scream, 1996, the market was not just favorable. It was a wide-open field, a perfect opportunity for a smart, low-cost film to dominate. To understand the opportunity, we must first analyze the comparative revenue of its genre predecessors. The slasher boom of the 80s had faded. By the mid-90s, sequels like Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, 1995, were only grossing around $15 million domestic on a $5 million budget. The genre was seen as creatively bankrupt and commercially tapped out. This is where the budget versus performance analysis becomes so crucial. The old model was no longer working. However, the horror genre as a whole has always had a fantastic genre ROI average. A well-made horror film can be produced for a low budget and generate massive returns. A classic example is the original Halloween, 1978, which was made for an estimated $325,000 and grossed over $70 million worldwide, setting an incredibly high ROI benchmark. This brings us to the market share projection for Scream, 1996. The studio saw a massive opportunity. The market for slasher films was not dead. It was just dormant, waiting for something new. By releasing the film in December 1996, they faced no direct horror competition. Their market share projection was based on the idea that they could capture 100% of the horror audience, as well as a significant portion of the teen and young adult market that was looking for an edgier alternative to holiday films. Key stat: in Q4 1996, the horror genre had a historical market share of less than 5%, but with no direct competition, Scream, 1996, had the potential to vastly overperform and capture a slice of the more lucrative comedy and thriller markets. However, every projection must be tempered by a saturation risk assessment. The primary risk for Scream, 1996, was not from other horror films, but from genre apathy. Had the audience truly moved on from slashers? The saturation risk assessment would have identified that if the film felt like a cheap rehash of old ideas, it would have been dead on arrival. The studio mitigated this risk with a marketing campaign that emphasized the film's cleverness, its humor, and its A-list cast. By positioning it as a smart, postmodern thriller rather than just another slasher, they completely sidestepped the genre fatigue and lowered the saturation risk assessment to near zero. Taking all these factors into account, we can determine the film's risk-adjusted ROI. The market share projection was incredibly high due to the lack of competition, and the saturation risk assessment was effectively managed through brilliant marketing and a genuinely original script. This created a perfect investment scenario where the potential for astronomical returns far outweighed the modest financial risk. The film didn't just meet its market share projection. It created an entirely new market, proving that innovation, even in a well-worn genre, can lead to incredible financial success. From meme references of its most iconic scene to viral fan clips that sparked massive social media reactions, Scream, 1996's cultural impact rivals any competitor's pop culture influence, creating fan engagement that lives on through TikTok clips and Reddit theories. A film truly becomes a phenomenon when it breaks out of the theater and into our everyday conversations, and Scream, 1996, has been a part of that conversation for decades. Its pop culture influence is so massive that it's almost impossible to overstate. It single-handedly revived the slasher genre, and its influence can be seen in countless movies and TV shows that followed. The most visible part of its legacy is the endless stream of fan-driven content. Even before modern social media, Scream, 1996, was generating cult classic memes. The "What's Up" parody scene from the Wayans brothers' spoof movie, Scary Movie, became a viral moment of its own, which in turn drove more people back to watch the original Scream, 1996. Today, on platforms like TikTok, the internet trends are constant. You'll see endless TikTok clips of fans lip-syncing to iconic fan quotes like, "What's your favorite scary movie?" or recreating the film's most intense moments. The social media reactions to the new films in the franchise always include callbacks and meme references to the 1996 original. Beyond the memes, Scream, 1996, is also famous for its clever Easter eggs and fun facts. One of the best pieces of trivia is that the school principal, played by Henry Winkler, is named Principal Himbry, a nod to Arthur Fonzarelli's nickname, the Fonz. Wes Craven also has a cameo as a janitor named Fred, wearing Freddy Krueger's iconic sweater. These little details are a huge reason why the fan engagement is so strong. Fans love to rewatch the film to spot all the cultural references and hidden jokes. This has led to decades of nostalgic fan discussions and deep-dive Reddit theories, with fans still debating the smallest details of the plot. From its most iconic moments becoming instant memes to its clever script fueling endless Reddit theories, the cultural impact of Scream, 1996, proves it's more than just a movie, it's a cultural touchstone that is still as sharp and relevant as ever. Now let's transition from the traditional balance sheet and quantify the single most powerful, yet often misunderstood, asset in the entertainment industry: cultural relevance. From an investor's standpoint, buzz is not an intangible, ethereal concept. It is a measurable asset that generates real, quantifiable financial returns. The massive and enduring cultural footprint of Scream, 1996, is a powerful economic engine that has been running for nearly 3 decades. Its value can be precisely analyzed through 2 core financial concepts: the direct return generated from unpaid media, a metric we'll call viral marketing ROI, and the indirect value it adds to the brand's entire advertising ecosystem, a phenomenon known as the CPM uplift from engagement. Let's start with the direct, tangible returns. The viral marketing ROI is a measure of how much financial value is created by organic, fan-driven content and conversation. In the pre-internet era of 1996, this asset was called word of mouth, the invaluable process of friends telling friends they had to see this movie. It was the chatter in school hallways and around office water coolers that made Scream, 1996, a cultural event. Today, that same force has been amplified a billionfold by the internet, manifesting as memes, viral TikTok clips, exhaustive YouTube video essays, and sprawling fan theory threads on Reddit. Every single one of these fan-created pieces of content is, in essence, a free advertisement for the film. Consider the sheer scale. A single viral trend on TikTok related to Scream, 1996, like users parodying the opening scene or dancing in a Ghostface costume, can generate billions of unpaid impressions globally in a matter of days. If the studio, now Paramount Pictures, had to pay for that level of reach through traditional digital advertising channels like paid social media campaigns or pre-roll YouTube ads, the cost would be astronomical. At a conservative estimate of $10 per thousand impressions, a standard CPM, 1 billion views represents an earned media value of $10 million. This is a direct revenue boost from cultural traction. The passion of the fan base is literally subsidizing the franchise's marketing budget, creating tens of millions of dollars in value over the lifetime of the IP. This leads to a crucial data point for any marketing executive. Key stat: a successful and sustained viral marketing ecosystem can lower a film's required paid media costs by an estimated 20–30%, while simultaneously increasing the effectiveness of the ads that are purchased. The marketing team for a new Scream, 1996, film doesn't have to spend millions just to establish brand awareness. The culture has already done that for them. Their paid spend can be focused on conversion, turning that existing awareness into ticket sales. This phenomenal viral marketing ROI is a cornerstone of the film's enduring financial success, making each new installment more profitable from the outset. This pervasive cultural heat also unlocks entirely new avenues for engagement-driven revenue. These are direct monetization streams that would not exist without the high level of organic fan interaction. For example, the studio's official YouTube channel can upload popular clips, behind-the-scenes footage, and cast interviews. Because these videos generate immense engagement, likes, comments, shares, and high watch times, they are favored by the YouTube algorithm, leading to a better ad share and higher direct revenue for the studio. Furthermore, the brand partnership value of the Scream, 1996, IP skyrockets. A brand looking to align itself with a culturally relevant, iconic, and slightly edgy property would see Scream, 1996, as a top-tier partner, especially during the lucrative Halloween season. Potential collaboration with a major video game like Call of Duty or Fortnite, where the Ghostface character is offered as a playable skin, could command a brand partnership value estimated to be between $1 million to $5 million for a single campaign. This is a pure, high-margin revenue stream that only exists because the film has achieved such a high level of cultural cachet. This leads to an even more significant long-term financial benefit, the IP licensing premium. When a franchise is as culturally dominant and recognizable as Scream, 1996, the studio can command higher royalty rates for all its merchandise. Standard licensing deal for a generic horror property might net the studio a 10% royalty on the wholesale price of a product. However, because the Ghostface mask is a global icon, the studio can negotiate from a position of immense strength, potentially increasing its standard licensing fee by several percentage points to 12%, 15%, or even more on premium products. That incremental increase translates into millions of dollars in additional, high-margin revenue over the lifetime of the franchise, from Halloween costumes and collectibles to apparel and home decor. The second core concept, and perhaps the more sophisticated financial multiplier, is the CPM uplift from engagement. CPM, or cost per mil, is the fundamental currency of digital advertising. It represents the price advertisers are willing to pay to show an advertisement 1,000 times. On platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, content that generates high levels of engagement is considered more valuable by the platform's algorithm and can therefore command a higher CPM. Advertisers are willing to pay more to associate their brand with content that an audience is actively and passionately engaged with. This is where Scream, 1996, cultural power becomes a direct financial lever, because the official content for Scream, 1996, and the related fan content are so highly engaged with, the entire digital ecosystem around the film becomes more valuable to advertisers. This CPM uplift from engagement means that the studio, when monetizing clips on its official channels, earns more money per ad view than a less engaging brand. Even fan creators who produce high-quality Scream, 1996, analysis videos benefit, earning more from the ads that run on their content. This creates a powerful and self-sustaining virtuous cycle. First, the film's quality and iconic status inspire genuine fan passion, which leads to high engagement. This engagement then creates the CPM uplift, making Scream, 1996, related content more lucrative to create. This financial incentive, in turn, encourages the creation of even more high-quality fan content, which further boosts the franchise's visibility and reinforces its cultural relevance. This constant content creation generates a perpetual wave of organic buzz, feeding directly back into a massive viral marketing ROI. This entire process is a perfect illustration of how a revenue boost from cultural traction can create a self-sustaining financial ecosystem that continuously adds significant, measurable value to the franchise, transforming a 1996 movie into a perpetually appreciating digital asset. While it may not have received Oscars nominations for its outstanding performances or Golden Globe wins, Scream 1996's critical acclaim rivals any competitor's film festival highlights, earning a stellar Rotten Tomatoes score and glowing audience ratings across all streaming platforms. In the world of horror, the ultimate award is often becoming a timeless classic, and by that measure, Scream 1996 is one of the most decorated films of all time. The critic reviews for Scream 1996 were overwhelmingly positive, a rare feat for a slasher film in any era. Critics praised its clever script, Wes Craven's masterful direction, and its perfect balance of horror and comedy. This glowing reception is reflected in its certified fresh Rotten Tomatoes score, which remains remarkably high even today. This level of critical praise was a huge part of the film's initial success. It signaled to audiences that Scream 1996 was not just another dumb teen horror movie. It was a smart, sophisticated thriller worth seeing. The audience scores backed this up completely. The audience ratings on platforms like IMDb and Letterboxd are consistently high, proving that the film's appeal is universal and enduring. While it wasn't a contender for the major awards, Scream 1996 dominated the genre awards of its time. It won Best Horror Film at the Saturn Awards, and Neve Campbell won Best Actress. This award's buzz within the horror community was a huge stamp of approval, solidifying its status as one of the top-rated movies of the year. The real recognition for Scream 1996, however, has come in the decades since its release. It is now widely regarded as one of the most important and influential horror films ever made. It frequently appears on best of lists and is a staple of nostalgic festival revivals and repertory screenings. The awards buzz it generates today is not about winning new trophies, but about celebrating its legacy. It's a must-watch film for any serious student of the genre. The lack of major nominations from the big awards shows at the time says more about the genre bias of those institutions than it does about the quality of Scream 1996. For fans and critics alike, the film's place in cinema history is secure. From a financial perspective, awards and critical acclaim are not merely about prestige. They are powerful financial instruments that can dramatically enhance a film's profitability. This prestige effect can be analyzed through two core financial concepts: the direct return generated from a successful awards campaign, which acts as a powerful ROI multiplier, and the broader, long-term enhancement of the asset's value, which we'll call the critical acclaim multiplier. For Scream 1996, while it wasn't an Oscar contender, its universal critical praise had a similar, powerful effect on its bottom line. Let's first address the award campaign cost. For a genre film like Scream 1996, the studio would not have mounted an expensive Oscar campaign. The award campaign cost was likely minimal, focused on trade ads and screenings for genre-specific awards like the Saturn Awards. This low upfront investment in awards marketing makes the financial benefits of its critical success even more impressive. The studio didn't have to spend millions to convince people the film was good. The critics did it for them, for free. The most direct financial benefit came in the form of a post-award revenue boost, not from awards, but from the glowing reviews. The stellar critic reviews for Scream 1996 acted as a powerful marketing tool that helped the film achieve incredible legs at the box office. Unlike most horror films, which are front-loaded, Scream 1996 built its audience week after week based on strong word-of-mouth fueled by the positive reviews. This sustained run was a massive ROI multiplier on the initial marketing and production investment. This is a perfect example of how a critical acclaim multiplier can directly impact theatrical revenue. Beyond the immediate box office bump, the long-term value is where the critical acclaim multiplier truly shines. A film that is critically acclaimed has a permanent stamp of quality that increases its value across all ancillary markets. This allows the studio to engage in prestige pricing. When negotiating streaming monetization deals or selling international distribution rights, a film with a 90% Rotten Tomatoes score can command a significantly higher price than a poorly reviewed film with a similar box office gross. A critically beloved classic like Scream 1996 can demand a prestige pricing premium of 20–30% or more on its licensing fees. Key stat: a certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes can often correlate with a 15–20% increase in post-theatrical streaming and rental revenue. This critical acclaim multiplier also creates a substantial streaming royalty bump. On platforms where royalties are tied to viewership, the enduring interest in critically acclaimed films means they continue to generate revenue for years. Scream 1996 is a perennial Halloween favorite, which drives a predictable and profitable surge in streaming monetization every single year. The film's legacy is solidified, making it a permanent fixture in best-of lists and film discussions, which in turn drives consistent library views. In essence, the universal critical praise for Scream 1996 was a massive, cost-free marketing campaign that provided an immediate ROI multiplier at the box office and a lasting critical acclaim multiplier that has been enhancing the film's value and generating award-driven revenue, in spirit, if not in trophies, for decades. As Scream 1996 cements its film legacy with franchise potential that rivals any competitor's universe expansion, fans speculate on sequels and spin-off ideas, while the legacy of its legendary director, Wes Craven, continues to influence upcoming movies and hint at a thrilling future. We have now come to the end of our deep dive, and what a journey it has been. Scream 1996 is more than just a successful movie. It's a cinematic milestone that has had an immeasurable cinematic impact on the horror genre. Its film legacy is that of a game-changer, a film that proved that horror movies could be smart, funny, and terrifying all at the same time. The most incredible part of its legacy is the incredible franchise potential that was unlocked by that first film. The decision to make Ghostface a mask and a motive, rather than a single person, was a stroke of genius that allowed for endless sequels. The franchise roadmap has now spanned nearly 3 decades, with multiple generations of characters and killers. This has led to intense fan anticipation for each new installment, with fans endlessly debating rumored plotlines and trying to guess the killer's identity before the big reveal. The universe expansion of Scream 1996 has been remarkable, even including a television series that explored the Ghostface mythology in a new format. This has, of course, led to a torrent of fan-generated spin-off ideas. Fans have pitched everything from a prequel about the original murders that set the plot in motion to a Scream 1996 in space concept. While these are just fan dreams, they speak to the richness of the world that was created. The director's next projects after Scream 1996, for the late, great Wes Craven, included more entries in the franchise, as well as other successful horror films, cementing his status as a true master of the genre. The film legacy of Scream 1996 is twofold. It is a stunning, self-contained cinematic achievement that is endlessly rewatchable, and it is the perfect launchpad for one of the most successful and enduring horror franchises in modern memory. As we conclude our financial analysis, we move from assessing a single film to evaluating a legacy, a multi-generational, billion-dollar asset. The true financial story of Scream 1996 is not just its impressive initial ROI, but its role as the ultimate ROI multiplier that has spawned a durable and highly profitable franchise. Our final cumulative yield analysis must now look beyond a single balance sheet and project the total value this intellectual property has generated and will continue to generate for years to come. Let's begin with the long-term franchise ROI. The first film, with a total investment of roughly $25–30 million, has led to a franchise that has grossed nearly $1 billion at the global box office. This is a staggering return on that initial investment. When you factor in decades of merchandise, home video sales, and television rights, the long-term franchise ROI for the Scream, 1996, IP is likely in the range of 20x to 30x its initial investment. Each new successful entry acts as a powerful ROI multiplier. Key stat: top-tier franchises often see an ROI multiplier of 3-5x with their first sequel alone. Scream, 1996, 2, made for $24 million and grossing $172 million, achieved an even greater return, proving the model's immediate success. This leads us to the grand prize, the total IP lifecycle value. This is an estimation of the total monetary worth of the Scream, 1996, brand across all possible monetization channels. Considering the 6 feature films, a television series, a massive and evergreen merchandising program led by the Ghostface mask, and potential for future video games and other media, the IP lifecycle value for Scream, 1996, can now be reasonably estimated to be well over $1 billion. This valuation is a direct result of the brilliant, repeatable formula established in the first film. Our cumulative yield analysis indicates that the brand's value is almost evenly split between the box office and the high-margin, long-tail revenue streams of merchandise and licensing. Of course, there are risks. The primary sequel investment risk for a long-running franchise is always audience fatigue. As the franchise moves forward with new creative teams, there is a risk that a misstep could damage the brand. However, the core concept of a whodunit with a new killer in each installment has proven to be incredibly resilient to this risk. Our final cumulative yield analysis concludes that Dimension Films' initial investment in Scream, 1996, is one of the greatest success stories in modern studio history. They executed a perfect franchise lifecycle profitability strategy. They made a modest initial investment, proved the concept with a massive hit, and then leveraged that success into a durable, multi-generational IP that continues to act as an ROI multiplier to this day. Scream, 1996, was not just a film. It was the blueprint for a financial empire built on a simple question. What's your favorite scary movie?
If you survived this financial autopsy, slash that like button and subscribe to Profit in Frames for more dissections of the horror genre's most profitable monsters. What scary movie should we put on the operating table next? Let us know your victim in the comments below.